coming to you a little bit later this Friday than normal. And I must say, this kind of feels good. This isn't something that we'll do very often, okay? But this feels good. Feels good. Friday afternoon, or Friday evening, really, after 6 on the East Coast. And, everything's starting to settle down. Got some more news, so I'm kind of glad I waited to do this a little bit later on, as we got another head coaching hire that we'll talk about on this show tonight. However, the one I'm most excited about, you'd think it'd be Herb in Jacksonville, but it's not. It's actually the one in New Jersey, actually, with the Jets. Mr. Clean is on with Ultrasol and extra power, ain't it, Mr. Green? Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 130th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me, as I mentioned, on this Friday afternoon. Starting to lose track of the days and times and all of that good jazz. I'm getting my life together, though. It feels good. Feels good. And, man, it's a lot to digest on this pod. I got a full sheet. Normally, my podcast rundown doesn't look this extensive. It's usually kind of slim pickings, a little text up here, maybe a little something down here, and then, you get to the good stuff at the bottom, maybe. Nah, this thing is chock full of info, and we're going to get to all of this. It's a lot of stuff here to unpack. So I'm not going to waste any time today. I'm not going to talk about any of the stuff that I've endured this week. Nobody cares anyway. Let's get right to the shits this evening, shall we? And you know how we like to start it off here on the Louie T Network podcast. Nothing has changed, nor will it ever. We're going to do this thing the old-fashioned way with a good, solid, hearty gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, we talked about this Deshaun Watson situation. Y'all give it up for Mr. Deshaun Watson. And I've said, look, we're going to continue to follow this situation as far as it goes. And it just continues to get more and more intriguing. I still don't think anything's going to happen. However, there are so many layers to this thing, and it's continuing to just grow. And I feel the frustration from Deshaun Watson continuing to manifest itself and to grow. And I told you, these things escalate rather quickly. And if the Texans don't get a hold of this thing, it could get out of control and they could lose their franchise quarterback. And not just any old franchise quarterback. We've already talked about that. He's not an average guy in this league. Okay, he's one of the best in the business. So they've got a lot of damage control to do, and they're starting to try to do that. But let's talk about the things that have transpired since the last time we've spoken. So Deshaun was on vacation, as NFL players often do after the season's done. They need to get away. They need to relax their body, relax their mind, get away from the grind that was the NFL season. You start this thing in July for a lot of teams, and it doesn't end until December. And in this year, it didn't end until January, the first week of January. So it's a long grind. And this year was even worse because there is no, I got a bye week, so I'm going to go out and have a good time and enjoy myself. It's COVID-19. You want to really be particular about the people you're around and things of that nature. So you weren't able to kind of just exhale during the season as you would normally do. So this was a long season. Long story short, Deshaun Watson just came back from his vacation, and he wasn't happy. And all of these rumors that we were hearing about him being frustrated and about this situation getting to a point where he may ultimately ask for a trade, which he has not done to this point. Hasn't said anything about requesting a trade or wanting out of Houston, but he is frustrated. Well, he put a little bit of a voice to that. And Watson talked about, his frustration level on Twitter. He had a post where he talked about his frustration level starting out at a 2 and then elevating all the way to 10. And so You know, you don't want to hear that if you're the Texans organization. And I've already talked about what they need to do to provide a little bit of damage control here. If you're Cal McNair, the owner of the Houston Texans, you've got to put this fire out before it spreads, because once it does, no amount of water, no amount of damage control is going to stop him from wanting to get out. Once a guy has made his mind, and he hasn't gotten to the point where he has requested a trade, so you don't want it to get to that point where he wants a trade. So he posts, Deshaun even takes it a step further. And, you know, look, I don't like to get into this kind of stuff. You know, when we get on socials and we start having cryptic tweets and messages on IG, like he posts a picture of himself in a Joe Montana jersey. We talked about all the teams that were really interested in monitoring this Deshaun Watson situation. The 49ers were one of those teams. They would love to get out of the Jimmy G business, and no better way to get out of the Jimmy G business than to get into the Deshaun Watson business. So, needless to say, he's wearing a throwback Joe Montana jersey, and he posts a picture, and he says, look, it's a dope pick, you know. I think he did that on purpose. You know, I think it was a shot at the Texas organization. Like, hey, I wouldn't mind playing for this team right here. We heard last week, and I talked about it earlier this week, that he threw out the scenario. It would just, you know, you could trade me to Miami. You know, that came from his camp. It didn't come out of his mouth, but his camp, which means that somebody around him is thinking this way. Hey, trade me to Miami for Tua. So that came up. There's that thing. We'll talk about Tua a little bit later on in this show. But, you know, all of this stuff is, look, he's dropping breadcrumbs. If you're the Texans, you better run behind him and pick up every single one of these breadcrumbs, get to Deshaun Watson, sit down, and figure this thing out. Because if he drops enough of these breadcrumbs and it leads him to another destination and he makes up his mind, I no longer want to play for the Houston Texans, there is nothing you can say, there's nothing you can do that will change his mind. Once it gets to that Khalil Mack boiling point where he decided, I don't want to talk to you, I'm not picking up the phone when you call me, trade me. I'm not coming to camp, I'm done. You didn't want to pay me my money, I'm out. Once it gets to that point, it's untenable and it's over, and all you can do now is try to salvage the situation by getting as much as you can. And as we all know, and it doesn't matter what sport it is, you can't get equal value for a superstar. You can't. It's impossible. It doesn't matter what sport it is. You see trades in the NBA happen all the time. We just saw one blockbuster deal with James Harden going to the New Jersey Nets, or excuse me, the Brooklyn Nets. That I'm showing my age. The Brooklyn Nets. But there's no, and every team, it was a 4-team deal. Every team in that deal got something good. But you can't replace Harden in Houston. You just can't. It's impossible. And the Nets got the Rockets got all these picks for the next 8 years or whatever. It's ridiculous. Doesn't matter. Unless one of those guys turns out to be a superstar, you can't replace a superstar. There's no equal value for giving up. Even though James Harden's getting up there in age, there's no replacing a superstar. And it's the same thing in the NFL. You can get all the first round picks you want. I told you when the Seattle Seahawks traded for Jamal Adams, people are outraged. Oh my God, they traded 2 first round picks for a safety. This is crazy. I'm like, no, it's not. They'll be fine. They don't do anything with first round picks anyway. They'll be fine. But Jamal Adams is a superstar at the safety position. He's one of the best in the business. The guy had 9 sacks this year as a safety. I mean, who's doing that? That's absurd. So, if you're the Jets, you'd much rather just have Jamal Adams. Those 2 first-round picks, I hope they go really well for you, and I hope they help you fast-track to being a better football team. But I guarantee you, Robert Saleh, who just took the job in New York with the Jets, would much rather have Jamal Adams at free safety than the first-round pick he'll have at the back end of the first round for the Seattle Seahawks. When they finish the 23rd or 4th pick in the draft, whatever it ends up being. He'd much rather have Jamal Adams than the 24th pick in the draft. I guarantee you that. But that's nor here nor there. This thing it's really evolving. So Cal McNair, who is the owner of this Houston Texans franchise, says he's damage control. I've talked about it's all about damage control, and I like the personal accountability here. I like the self-awareness. this might have come a little bit too late, and this may just be lip service. He might just be saying the right things that he thinks everybody wants to hear. Again, the key is he needs to talk to Deshaun Watson, and reportedly he's already done that. All right, well, more talking needs to be done, but more importantly, action needs to follow. But here's what he said. This is the start. If players, media, and fans are upset, then that's on me. I'll apologize for my actions or communications that created mistrust. I accept the fans' frustration. I'll listen and learn. Okay, closed quote. So that's in a really big acknowledgement of wrongdoing and negligence on the part of ownership in Houston. And anybody around the league will tell you that they've mismanaged not just this situation with Deshaun Watson, but their organization as a whole over the last 3 or 4 years. Starting with Bill O'Brien assuming power and all of a sudden having this ability to trade away big-time assets, not getting enough for Jadeveon Clowney when you knew good and well you weren't going to re-sign him. And just pretty much giving him away for a hot ham and cheese sandwich, which was just gross. It had mayonnaise coming out of the side of it. It was cold, gross. Then you give away DeAndre Hopkins, and everyone's like, did they really just do that? And then you trade away all of these picks to get Laramie Tunsil, and then you make him the highest paid tackle in football. There was just a lot of mismanagement going on in Houston. And so that was before, the mismanagement started before Jack Easterby entered the picture. Who is Jack Easterby? We're going to talk about him here in a second. But before we get to that, there was another layer of this situation that was added on Tuesday when beloved ex-Texans wide receiver Dre, as we have affectionately named him over his years, but Andre Johnson spoke. And when Dre speaks, everybody listens. Why? Because Dre doesn't speak very often. But when Dre does speak, people shut up and they listen. And so Dre had this to say about the Texans situation, and he talked and he tweeted this out. So I'm going to read you this tweet from Dre, and it says, if I'm at Deshaun Watson, I will stand my ground, meaning I will continue to push the envelope with this organization because changes need to be made, essentially. He says, the Texans organization is known for wasting players' careers. Ouch. Ouch. And let me just add something to that before I read the rest of this tweet. You had ex-Texans tackle Dwayne Brown, who is now in Seattle. Remember, he was in Houston. Texans refused to pay him the money he thought he was owed and deserved, and so he got shipped out to Seattle. He tweets out the GIF of what's the dude from Titanic's name? Leonardo DiCaprio serving up the drink, like, preach. Essentially, you know what I mean? Toast. So anyway, since Jack Easterby, who is the vice president of football operations, and we're going to talk about this Mr. Jack Easterby guy here in a second because this is all fascinating to me, has walked into the building, nothing good has happened in or for the organization, and for some reason, someone can't seem to see what's going on. Pathetic, with 3 exclamation marks. So that was Dre on Twitter. Pretty strong and damning stuff. So who is this Jack Easterby guy that he speaks of? Because I really wasn't aware of his title within the organization. I knew that he was a guy that seemed to be a cause of a lot of mistrust and dysfunction in that organization. But if you're not following the day-to-day minute details and minutia of everything, then you really don't actually know. So here's this Jack Easterby's guy's resume. So he starts out in Jacksonville as like a like the lowest on the totem pole. One of those assistants. I almost called him a TA, a teaching assistant, but that's not what they're called. I forgot what they're called in the NFL. But it's one of those like unpaid assistant jobs. You know, one of those dudes is getting people coffee and one of those jobs. Cutting up film, one of those jobs, right? So then he goes to New England and he becomes their team chaplain. Like, that's weird. You go from being like just a random Joe Schmo at the bottom of the rung in Jacksonville to now he is a pastor, but you know that wasn't his role in Jacksonville. Okay, so he goes to New England and he becomes like their team chaplain, and he's really highly regarded and revered in New England. He becomes a part of Belichick's inner circle, and a lot of people go to him for spiritual guidance and personal discovery and things of that nature, and he seemed to be really good at it. Apparently, that helped him land a gig in Houston in 2019. And in 2019, since he's gotten there, here are all the charges that are being levied against one Jack Easterby. All right. Undermining other executives and decision makers, including the head coach who helped bring him to Houston, i.e. Bill O'Brien. Okay. Sounds like a Bruce Allen stabbing in the back to me, if I've ever seen one, with Mike Shanahan, but I'm not going down that road. The teams, he said, holding workouts at the head strength coach's house during COVID-19 pandemic after the NFL had ordered franchises to shut down all facilities shortly before a breakout of infection among players. So he's disregarding the NFL's wishes to not have guys gather, and he's having them meet at the strength conditioning coach's house. Why? Advocating for a trade of star receiver DeAndre Hopkins soon after arriving in Houston. So this is back in 2019 when he first got there. He's already planting the seeds of, hey, we should trade this guy. He's bad news. Then Hopkins actually gets traded the next year, as we know, this offseason, to Arizona in a widely panned deal, meaning the deal was absolutely garbage for the Houston Texans. So he was advocating trading him as soon as he got to Houston in 2019. What? Anyway, last charge. Fostering a culture of distrust among staff and players to the point that one Texan and two other staffers believed players were being surveyed outside of the building. So this guy is bad news. And to make matters worse, owner Cal McNair was asked, is Jack Easterby gonna be fired? And to which he responded, no. They said, well, is he going to retire or resign then? No, not to my knowledge. So if you really want players like Deshaun Watson to trust the process, to really buy in and want to stay in Houston, it sounds like you need to start by getting rid of Jack Easterby. Does it sound like Cal McNair is going to be pressured into doing anything that he doesn't want to do? And so we'll see just how dedicated he is to keeping Deshaun Watson in Houston. Because if Deshaun says it's either him or me, what does Cal McNair do? I think we're getting to a point where if Deshaun Watson isn't a huge fan of Jack Easterby, and he tells Cal McNair, look, I really appreciate all of the things that you've been doing of late, but if you really want to show me, don't talk to me. I'm done with the lip service. You told me I was going to be a part of the GM search and that you were gonna take in my input, and then you just go and hire a random dude that wasn't on anybody's radar, including the hiring firm that you went out and sought their help and paid tons of money to give you candidates, a list of candidates, and you just disregard that and go hire this guy. So I'm done with the lip service. I don't really want to hear from you in that regard. I want action. And the first action that I want taken is for you to get rid of Jack Easterby. If you want me to stay, he has to go. If he stays, I want out. That may be what it boils down to, for Cal McNair. We'll see how this thing turns, but this thing is really spicy. Spicy. I'm here for it. All of it. We'll see how this thing unfolds. That's not going to end anytime soon, though. I could see this thing dragging out all the way until April, and then we get to the draft, and we could hear a bombshell go off. We'll see, but we'll keep covering it as it unfolds here on the Louie T Network podcast. So, let's get to In Case You Missed It. And I want to jump into this. There are so many different topics here that I want to go through. And as I go through them, I would like to read some comments just to kind of engage some of you guys out there. So if you're watching this, first and foremost, thank you for watching. I know it's an odd time for this podcast, not normal timing. But that said, I really appreciate you carving out a little bit of time in your day to chop it up with me, your man, Louie T. And if you're out there and you want to have your comment read, you know how the game goes. Just simply use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read. We'll read some of them, not all of them. I'm not going to go through every single comment, but I may pick out a few comments and read them on the air as we go through some of these situations. And in case you missed it, let's go ahead and get to In Case You Missed It. So you start with the first. In case you missed it. And you may have missed this, because this one could have snuck right under the radar. You know, Josh Gordon, wide receiver, Seattle Seahawks, suspended again. And at this point, I'm like, NFL, just put the guy out of his misery. Just end his career, man. Why are we doing this? Why? Like, how many chances is he gonna get? Seriously. All right, just end this man's career. He's now suspended indefinitely after just having his suspension overturned and being reinstated into the league like literally a month and a half ago. He's now suspended again. Just suspend this guy and ban him from the league. Just end his career. Just pop, put 2 in the dome of his career and end it. Like, why do we have to continue? And then we'll hear that he's petitioning to get back into the league a year and a half from now. Who cares? He's no longer Flash Gordon. He's no longer that guy. Who cares? Just end it already. In case you missed it, the Detroit Lions want to hire Dan Campbell as their next head coach. Say what? Dan Campbell? So the Lions have hired a GM, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. So they're doing it in the right order. But Dan Campbell, really? All these coaching candidates out here, you know, Robert Saleh, and remember they were petitioning in Detroit. They put up a banner begging the Lions to hire Robert Saleh, you know, before the season was even over. You got Robert Saleh, you got Arthur, Smith, you got, all of these candidates out here. Eric Bieniemy out here. I told you, I think Joe Brady's going to be a star as a coach in this league. The Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator. You got all these candidates out here. And you're going to go after Dan Campbell. Now, Dan might come in here and light it up. And I'm rooting for Dan. Remember, he was the interim coach in Miami, and we laughed on this podcast, this very podcast. We laughed because he didn't know if he was coming or going. He won a game, too. He went to Tennessee and beat the Titans his first week. That's my rule. You know my rule. When you fire a coach the next week, whomever's the interim head coach, prepare to get a win. Especially if those players couldn't stand the last guy that was there. They can't wait to play for this next guy. And Dan Campbell didn't know if he had timeouts, didn't know how to call them. He was just walking on the sidelines. He didn't know what the hell was going on. He got a win. Good for him. The rest of that season did not go well. But apparently, Dan Campbell is well respected. He's the assistant head coach in New Orleans. And apparently the Lions are very smitten with him. They haven't had an in-person interview with him, so I don't know what line of communication has been established to make them this anxious to get this man in their building to sign a contract that makes him the next head coach of the Detroit Lions. But by all accounts, they're waiting on the Saints season to be over so that they can get Dan Campbell out to Detroit, sit down with him, iron out a few things, and get him to sign on the dotted line. That's really interesting to me because he came out of nowhere. We were talking about all these different candidates. We were talking about guys in college ranks, and we were naming all of these NFL guys that were, offensive or defensive coordinators, like Brandon Staley with the Rams, and all of these different guys that we were throwing out there that would have a shot. I talked about Matt Eberflus in Indianapolis, and, all of these different coaches, and Dan Campbell just comes out of nowhere. Ex-tight end in the league. We'll see what happens. I mean, look, Dan Campbell might be the shit for all I know. And he might come in and take the Lions to new heights that we couldn't have even imagined. We'll see. But Dan Campbell? Really? Never would have guessed it. I do have a couple of super chats. I want to take some of these super chats real quick and maybe a few comments while we're at it. Nick Caps. Thank you for the super chat, Nick W. Caps. What up, Nick? Really appreciate you, man. Thank you for the love. Got another super chat. This one is from William Edwards. Thank you for the super chat, William. Greatly appreciate you. My man William Edwards writes, crazy thought here. Baker Mayfield gets his contract fumbled by the Browns. We love to sign veterans. What do you think? There's no way Baker Mayfield gets out of Cleveland. Just, again, teams don't fumble quarterback contracts. Either they really like a guy and they're going to re-sign him, or they don't. Now, you could think a guy is a little bit overpriced and you may not want to pay him what he's looking for. And like the Dak Prescott situation in Dallas, it was a situation where the years kind of got muffled by the two parties. Dak wanted 4 years, the Cowboys wanted 5 years, and so, or it might have been the other way around. Either way, and they couldn't come to a consensus on that. If you're the Cowboys, it was not smart business on your part because you knew the price is only going to go up. It's not going to go down. So you just needed to get that done. Like I said, he's got the Cowboys by the balls now, and really they have to do whatever he says or they have to let him walk. Either way, Dak Prescott is in the driver's seat right now because there's no way they want to pay him a second consecutive franchise tag. They don't want to go down that road. I told them as a Washington fan with Kirk Cousins, been there, done that. They really botched that thing 6 ways to Sunday, but they didn't really want Kirk. That was the thing. Bruce Allen didn't want Kirk Cousins, and you could tell. So, they're not gonna. You don't botch quarterback contracts. You botch a linebacker's contract, or you fumble a running back's contract. Maybe you're not really interested in re-signing that guy, or you fumble a wide receiver. You don't fumble and botch quarterback contracts, and it's just too important of a position. Either you want that guy or you don't. I mean, how often is it that we see quarterbacks get to free agency? Full, pure, unadulterated free agency. How often is it that guys are actually a free agent as a really good quarterback in the prime of their career? It never happens. Kirk Cousins is one of the few. Even when Drew Brees became a free agent in the prime of his career, I told you guys, go look at Drew Brees' numbers. That's what prompted the Chargers to go and draft Phillip Rivers, and they had Phillip Rivers sitting there, and they're like, look, we're ready to move on. Even though Brees was starting to come of age, and Brees hurt himself that season, by the way. So you don't see it very often. It doesn't happen. A guy like Baker Mayfield doesn't hit the free agent market at playing good football, which he has been playing exceptional football this year. And they're 2 years away from even having that discussion come to fruition because you don't normally see quarterbacks get to that 5th year option as a rookie on a rookie deal. Normally, after, as you go into that 5th year, really into that 4th year, like for instance, the Bills are talking extension with Josh Allen right now. And I venture to say that this offseason, Josh Allen's going to get paid. He's only in year 3 going into year 4. This is the year that they would have to go ahead and decide whether they were going to pick up that 5th year option or not. They're not even looking at that 5th year option. They're looking to re-sign him right now, which is smart because the price is only going to go up on Josh Allen. So get in now before somebody signs, that $230 million deal, and then Josh is looking for $240 million. Because, that's the next thing that's going to happen. Somebody's going to sign a $200 million contract. Then somebody's going to sign a 210. Then somebody's going to sign a 215. And somebody's going to sign a 220. It's only going to go up. It's not going down. So, Baker Mayfield's going to get his bread to stay in Cleveland. He's a perfect fit for Kevin Stefanski's offense. He's not going anywhere. But I wouldn't have any problems with it, personally. Got another super chat. This one is from Walter Bonner. Thank you for the super chat, Walter. Greatly appreciate you. My man Walter Bonner writes, Louie, what do you think of Keith Ishmael's play? Did he play both center and guard? I couldn't tell. From his college play and an interview, he struck me as a tough individual. Keith Ishmael was cool. I prefer him as a center. He could play both center and guard. That is correct. He did play both of those positions at San Diego State, but his more natural position for me is center. Well, we just re-signed our center to an extension, a 4-year extension. So it doesn't look well. It doesn't look good for Keith Ishmael in terms of him getting, meaningful snaps. But again, injuries can occur, so he'll be there in case of an emergency. But right now, it doesn't look too good for him seeing the field. And I don't view him as a real, traditional guard prospect. To me, he's more of a center. I like his athleticism. I think there are some things that he does well, but I think that they like the way their guard position looks. And I'm not convinced that they're looking at Sadiq Charles as a guard as well. So, we'll see what they decide to do at tackle, if anything. But I don't think Keith Ishmael is a guy that you should be looking forward to seeing on the field, because that would mean something is wrong. So, like I said, solid player, but not a guy that I was all that, high on. So we'll see what happens with him. It's depth. And as we saw this year, especially along our offensive line, your depth does get tested, and you need guys on your roster like Keith Ishmael that can step in. So if his number is called, one thing I can say about Chase Roullier, he's been rather dependable, always available, and hasn't really sustained any major injuries in his career. And any injuries that he has had, he's been able to play through them. So I don't see Keith Ishmael really being able to unseat him at the center position. But remember, Rivera has lauded and praised guys on the roster for having flexibility, or as he likes to call it, positional flex, meaning positional flexibility. Keith Ishmael would be one of those guys with positional flexibility, being able to play all 3 interior offensive line positions. And that goes a long way in helping you stick on a roster. But we'll see what happens with him moving forward. All right, let's get back to, in case you missed it, Falcons to hire Arthur Smith, ex-Titans offensive coordinator, to be their next head coach. That just came down about a good hour and a half ago. So we're starting to see a lot of these vacancies on both the GM and head coaching side be filled. I think we're down to now 3 vacancies for head coaches. We came into, we left Black Monday at 6. Then the Eagles got rid of Doug Peterson. That made it 7 vacancies to go along with 7 GM vacancies. And then we saw the Lions have Dan Campbell kind of circled. So we'll put that one on ice. The Jets made a hire. We'll talk about that. The Jags made a hire. We'll talk about that. And now the Falcons have made a hire. So really, there's only 3 jobs still available out there if you're keeping tabs on these head coaching opportunities. And so it's interesting to see how all of this continues to play out. But as you can see, it's really coming together quickly as teams are starting to finish up these interviews. And it's amazing to see how many of these coaching vacancies have been filled. I think now we're down to Texans, Chargers, and Eagles are the 3 remaining head coaching vacancies. Texans, Chargers, Eagles. If Dan Campbell ends up being the guy in Detroit. And so the Falcons hire Arthur Smith to be their next head coach. He's an offensive-minded guy, most notably taking Ryan Tannehill and that Titans offense to new heights. Say what you want about the Titans defensively, and even the lack of offensive production in the wild card game versus the Ravens. But this is a Titans offense that for the last 2 years has surprised a lot of people, opened some eyes, and was really explosive this year at times. They put up 40 plus on multiple occasions, including against the Buffalo Bills on a Tuesday night, I believe it was, earlier in the season. They put up 40 multiple times this year. And he took Ryan Tannehill and turned him into a household name. So there are a lot of things that you can really be excited about if you're a Falcons fan. But I told you, if I were a Falcons fan or if I were in that front office, I wasn't looking for an offensive-minded guy. I was probably, because this offense, they got it on tilt. As long as Matt Ryan is healthy and their offensive line, which they've spent a lot of draft capital in over the last 3 or 4 years, as long as they're intact somewhat, they're going to score points and they're going to be dynamic offensively. That's not the problem. The problem is the defense. And unless Arthur Smith hires a really competent defensive coordinator that can get this defense juiced up and playing the way that you expect them to play. Remember, just 3 years ago, this Falcons defense was one of the better units in football. When they went to the Super Bowl, that defense at times was stifling. It was suffocating. And I thought the defense got even better in 2017, the year that they made the playoffs as a wild card and had to go on the road and ultimately beat the Rams. I thought that defense was even more stifling the following year. And then they just fell off a table in 2018, moving forward. And so I was looking to rekindle that magic. Because the offense, honestly, I don't care who you put in. They're gonna score points. Julio was out for much of the year. He was out, in and out of the lineup, healthy one week, hurt the next. They still score points. Next man up, And so I don't worry about their offense. But Arthur Smith gets the job. And it's not just about X's and O's. I've already talked about that with head coaches in this league. You also have to be a manager of people. You have to be a leader of people, of men. And maybe it's not just about his ability to coach up or his philosophy or scheme offensively. Maybe it was about his vision for the organization, and they feel like this guy's a leader. And this is the kind of guy we need in our locker room at this moment. And I'd love to figure out what exactly the Falcons are going to do with their quarterback situation. Are they going to move forward with Matt Ryan? Are they going to draft a quarterback at number 4? A lot of interesting dynamics there, but they got their head coach now in Arthur Smith in Atlanta. In case you missed it, Jets hire Robert Saleh as their next head coach in New York for the Jets. And I love the New York Post. And, they always do a really good job with their headlines. And the headline when he was hired was essentially, Jets hire Robert Saleh as an all-purpose cleaner. And then the title said, Mr. Green. Okay. And if you didn't catch this at the beginning, this is what I was singing. I was singing the Mr. Clean song. Mr. Clean is always ultra solid, extra power, ain't it? Mr. Green. He's got a lot of shit to clean up in New York, does Robert Saleh. And that's why they said he's an all-purpose cleaner. It's a lot of shit in New York with this Jets organization. Hope he's a powerful cleaner that cuts through grease and grime and soap scum and all of that stuff, because they need a true leader. And from all reports, that's exactly what they're getting. Dick Sherman jumped on Twitter to say, y'all got a real one in New York in Robert Saleh. And this is the job he wanted. It's crazy when you hear guys, say this. What is he supposed to say? But behind closed doors, he was telling people, I really want the Jets job. And I think he feels like their defense isn't that far off, and there's some pieces there to work with, like Quinnen Williams, and guys like that. I think he feels really confident that this Jets defense has some players on it, and you add a couple more pieces here and there, and they could be formidable sooner rather than later. And he's a defensive-minded guy. And so, it's interesting to see, again, much like the situation in Atlanta where you got a quarterback and you're not sure what the future holds for that guy. Same thing with this Jets organization. What are they going to do at number 2? Are they going to hold on to Sam Darnold and, take offensive lineman or a wide receiver? Or are they going to trade out of that pick, get King's ransom for it? Or are they going to trade Sam Darnold, take a quarterback, and move forward that way? I would like to think that Robert Saleh had a little bit of say in what his vision for this team is and whether a guy like Sam Darnold is a part of it or not. The Jags hire Urban Meyer. Duvalllll! Stand up. Y'all in the building. Finally. I mean, really. This is a big hire. I never expected Herb to end up in the NFL. I didn't. I thought there were a bunch of opportunities for Herb to end up in the NFL, but never thought it was going to come to fruition. And here he is. The Jags lured him out of retirement. I'm waiting on the numbers for this deal. I'd imagine that it's double figures. We're talking $10, $11 million. Remember, the number initially was 12. I don't know if it gets to 12. Look, if you really want $12 million, you don't tell them that's what you tell them. I want 15, and then you let them feel good about talking you down to 12. That's what a good negotiator does. If you're trying to get the best deal possible, you don't start at the number that you want. You start higher than that number and have them talk you down to the number that you actually want, and you make them feel like they're getting a deal. I surmised that he wanted 10. You start at 12, and then they talk you down to 10, and you go, okay, you twisted my arm. Okay, 10 a year. Let's do it. But it's the perfect situation. You got the number 1 pick. You got plenty of draft capital, thanks to the Los Angeles Rams. And I don't know. I think it's just the Rams that they've got extra draft capital from. Not to mention, they've got plenty of cap space. And it's a really good situation to come into. And wow, Urban Meyer, old Herb. Back in the league. Well, not back in the league, is in the league. And had his presser today. Talked about taking better care of himself health-wise. That was my concern. I was like, I don't want to see this guy about to pass out on the sidelines. And he said, look, I'm not running around at practice anymore. That's for somebody else to do. I'm going to chill out. Yeah. Heard it all before. I was at work. It wasn't my car you saw. I don't believe you, Herb, is what I'm essentially saying. All right. You are one of those guys that you get wrapped up in what it is you do, and you can't help but go balls to the wall. Herb's going to burn out after 2.5 years. I'm calling it right now. You're going to see Herb on the sidelines of a late close contest against the Indianapolis Colts. It's 27-25 and they're driving late, and Herb's going to be hunched over, holding on to his knees, barely can stand because it's just eating him up. The angst and the anxiety, it's tearing him to shreds. I didn't want to see it. And I hope I'm wrong, because I said the same thing about Bruce Arians, old Uncle Bruce. And now we're in year 2 of Bruce. Bruce seems to be doing well. Haven't heard any issues with health concerns with Bruce. So we're doing well in Tampa right now. And I guess Tom Brady helps with that. I bet you if Jameis was throwing another 30 interceptions this year, Uncle Bruce might be a lot more closer to retirement and anxiety than he is with Tom Brady under center. But we'll see what happens, man. I'm excited. I'm actually excited for, and I hope the NFL doesn't get carried away with this. You know how they like to do. Now that Herb's here, Herb's not actually taking any snaps. So I don't need to see Jacksonville on national television 5 times next year. 2 or 3 is fine. Don't put them on 5 times. Please don't San Francisco 49ers me from 3 years ago when they thought the 49ers, after Jimmy G went, 5-0 down the stretch, they thought the 49ers were going to be so good the next year. They put them on 5 times. They were terrible. Jimmy G tears his ACL in like week 3, and we got to sit through CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins, 5 times the remainder of the season. Or don't Cleveland Browns me from 2 years ago when everybody thought Freddie Kitchens and Baker Mayfield, here they go. Here come the Browns. And we got the Browns and the Jets on a Monday night. And we're like, oh my God, this is the worst football ever. Please don't do this to us. 2 or 3 Urban Meyer games is fine. Don't 5-piece us, please. But Herb to Jacksonville. How sweet it is. In case you missed it, Panthers hire Scott Fitterer as their new GM. Former Seahawks Vice President of Football Operations inks a deal to become the new general manager of the Carolina Panthers, and we'll see how he fits into that equation. But they've done things really well in Seattle, so if that's any indication of what they're getting in Carolina, you got to feel really good about that hire. We'll find out a lot about Scott Fitterer over the next few years. In any event, before we get to another one, let's get to some comments. And I got a super chat here, and then I want to knock out a few comments. Got one here from Nick W. Caps. Double up. Thank you for doubling it up, Nick Caps. Greatly appreciate you, my man Nick. Writes, I'm at work listening. I missed AP this year. Say his name like you do. Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he did some good things in Detroit, man. I wouldn't be shocked if he was in the league again next year. Really appreciate you, Nick. And thank you for listening at work. What up, Chris Z? What's good with you, bruh? Lil_Gilly says, who do you think will come out on top of the Ramsey-Adams matchup? We'll save that for a little bit later on. I'll come back to that comment when we get to that breakdown. Captain Spartan 04 says, dark days are ahead of the Texans. Cal could care less about them. It seems that way. Seems like he's not a man that is willing to do what he said in his comment, which is, I'll listen and learn. Sounds like he's going to do what the hell Cal wants to do, because his life has been filled with doing whatever the hell Cal wants to do. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. No one has ever really told him what he should or shouldn't do. And I don't know if he's going to change now. So dark days could be ahead of this Texans organization. Unfortunately, you might be right. Captain Spartan 04 says, looks like Eric B won't get a shot again this year, but Lions' new ownership and still same sadness. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes scares absolutely nobody. Now, I don't know Brad Holmes from Adam from Eve. As I told you with these GM candidates, I don't know any of these guys. Unless you're a retread and we've actually got tangible proof of what you've done in this league before, I can't tell you who any of these guys are. When you throw out an assistant GM or somebody's vice president of player personnel or somebody's vice president of football operations, I can't tell you. All I know is what that organization has been doing, and you'd like to think the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So that's why they're getting a job, just like the one I just talked about in Carolina with Scott Fitterer. He's coming from Seattle. That's been a model organization in terms of how you run an organization. So you'd like to think, well, he's been a part of that brain trust, so he should have some of that by osmosis rub off on him, and he should be able to take what they did in Seattle to some degree and use that in Carolina. That's the thought. That's why you hire a guy like that. But we'll see. But I can tell you this Brad Holmes guy, I'm rooting for him. He's a brother. So right off the top, I'm rooting for Brad Holmes. There are not many brothers that get opportunities to be general managers in this league. And because of it, and we're going to get to that in a second, the Los Angeles Rams will be getting some draft compensation, which is a new thing this year with the Rooney Rule. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But to your original point, it does look like Eric Bieniemy is going to be on the outside looking in. All these chairs in this game of musical chairs, and every year he seems to be without a chair, and it's amazing. But he also said, and I think this was a little bit of him acknowledging the fact that he wasn't going to get a job. So to make himself feel better, you say, hey, I'm going to wait for the perfect opportunity, or I'm not leaving Kansas City. That sounds great. But if the Jaguars would have offered him, or the Jets or the Lions or any of these teams would have offered him, he would have taken the job. He's not waiting for the perfect opportunity. He's waiting for a opportunity that no one seems to want to give this guy. And I've said this before, I've heard he's a terrible interviewer. Whatever the case may be, if you can't convey your message and your vision for what you think that organization is going to be under your tutelage to the guy that's going to hire you, it's hard for them to pull the trigger. Don't care what your credentials say. Don't care how many people recommend you for the job. If you can't explain to me why I should give you the keys to my Mercedes, which is my NFL organization, and let you lead this group, then I'm not going to hire you. And I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm just telling you what I've heard over the years, why he hasn't gotten an opportunity yet. But it's just amazing that he still manages to not get a job. And this was a really good offseason with some opportunities that I thought were ripe for a guy like Eric Bieniemy with his background, having coached Patrick Mahomes. You're talking about Deshaun Watson? You telling me if he could, I said if he could just give you half of what they're doing in Kansas City and bring that to Houston with Deshaun Watson, are you kidding me? Like, seriously, if you're Jacksonville, if he could just bring half of what they're doing with Trevor Lawrence, half of what he's doing in Kansas City with Mahomes, with Trevor Lawrence, are you kidding me? Like, and you could just extrapolate that over any of these jobs with a quarterback with the skill set like you see in Kansas City. And there aren't many guys with that skill set. Let me just say that. There aren't many Patrick Mahomes walking the earth. However, you know, these are some intriguing situations. And if this guy's as talented and if he is as big a part of the success offensively in Kansas City as a lot of people are leading on, how could you not want this guy to be leading your team? But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not always just about X's and O's. It's not always about your ability to scheme it up. It's also about leadership qualities. And if you can't convey your message to me, how are you going to convey your message to 53 other guys? And maybe that's why he's not getting jobs. I don't know the answer to that. I can't confirm nor deny that. I'm just telling you what was told to me in past off seasons. And now he's saying, hey, I'm going to just wait for the perfect opportunity. Sounds good. It sounds like a man that is coming to grips with the fact that he probably isn't getting another job. And it doesn't help that the Chiefs are always good and, you know, he's always in the playoffs, but they had a bye week, just like they had a bye week last year. So he could have been interviewing this entire time. It's just crazy. Captain Spartan also says, I like Salah and Mike, even Joe Douglas. I just don't know if they can survive the New York media. You know how to survive the New York media? Win. Period. Brian Horst says, what are your top 3 favorite sports podcasts? I don't have, I'm lying. I got 2. I don't listen to a bunch of sports podcasts. I don't listen to a bunch of podcasts, period. I'm a music guy. So when I got free time, I usually listen to music. But I listen to the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast, but I'm so far behind. I'm still on week 15. Like, I'm literally listening to the film breakdown of the San Francisco game. I'm so behind on that podcast. And then I love the Move the Sticks podcast, but I haven't listened to that in months. When I say months, since the beginning of the season, I think I listened to it as the season was getting ready to start. And I haven't listened to one episode, but I love Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah. Those are my 2 go-tos. When I'm in the gym, I listen to the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. And when I'm all caught up on that, then I go to the Move the Sticks podcast. But I don't really have another one after that, honestly speaking. So we'll stop there. Make sure I don't have any more super chats. And I don't. So, in case you missed it, Lions hire Brad Holmes as their GM. And my man Captain Spartan just brought it up. He was the former Rams director of college scouting. So, not the VP of football operations or VP of player personnel that we've been hearing, or assistant GM, but this guy was a scout. So he boots on the ground, you know, head of the college scouting. So he knows the prospects. And, you know, I listened to a quick hit yesterday from Rams GM. Shucks, forgot his damn name. And he's a cool ass cat too. Anyway, and he was talking about Brad Holmes, and the first time he heard Brad Holmes speak, and it was at the combine like 7-8 years ago or whatever. And he was like, he had to present, to all these NFL coaches what prospects he thought were good. And it's something that they have these, pseudo scouts do, guys that are on the lower tier level to do. And he said he was blown away by the presentation and said, this guy's going to be a GM in the league someday. And here it is. Brad Holmes, he's a brother. He's getting an opportunity to be the head guy in Detroit. And one thing I can say about the Lions, say what you want about the organization and their lack of success, they've given brothers an opportunity to run the show in Detroit. Martin Mayhew got an opportunity, and now Brad Holmes is getting an opportunity. I'm rooting like hell for him to succeed and do big things in Detroit. It will open doors for other guys like him if he can get this done the right way. So I'm hoping he's successful. I can't tell you, Adam, from me, I can tell you this though. The Rams, who haven't had a first round pick since they drafted Jared Goff back in 2016. I believe it was 2016. If I'm not mistaken, 15 was the Mariota Winston draft. 16 was the Goff Wentz draft. 17 was the Myles Garrett draft. And then 18 was the Baker Mayfield and all of those guys drafts. So, essentially what I'm telling you is the Rams haven't had a first round pick in forever. And in certain instances, they didn't have a second rounder either. And yet they got a bunch of talent on their roster. And that speaks to great scouting. This was the guy in charge of college scouting right here, Brad Holmes. All right, to get Cam Akers, to get David Edwards, to get Rob Havenstein, to get the kind of guys that they've gotten, John Johnson out of BC, to get guys like Fuller from Ohio State in the later rounds. They're doing a really good job of scouting these players and getting gems in the draft without the crutch of a first round pick. You got to do a hell of a job to keep a team relevant for as long as they've been relevant without the aid of a first round pick. And they've been able to do that. That speaks to the college scouting that they've done. And you got to give credit where credit is due. And Brad Holmes is getting his credit, and now he's getting an opportunity. And I couldn't be more elated and excited for him. And I hope he hits it out of the park. The Lions make the hire. And with that, the Rams, because they developed a minority candidate that ultimately got hired, they're going to get draft compensation for Brad Holmes getting hired to a GM position. I think they're going to end up getting a third round compensatory pick. That's huge. That's massive. The third round is the first round. They start handing out compensatory picks. So a third round compensatory pick is as high as it gets, essentially. That's awesome, and so maybe it will influence teams to start developing more minority candidates. So good for all parties involved. In case you missed it, the Steelers move on from offensive coordinator Randy Fichtner. Now, look, I don't know much about Fichtner. It seemed like Ben was running the damn offense by himself, honestly speaking. Seems like he was just a figurehead. I've heard people say that the offense ran better when Ben was calling his own audibles. I don't know what the hell was going on. All I know is that they didn't run the football effectively this year, and especially late in the season, and the offense seemed to regress. And, some of that was Ben. Ben wasn't good. But somebody's got to take the hit. Somebody's got to fall on the sword, and I think that guy ultimately is Randy Fichtner. Now, my man Captain Spartan, if he's still out there, would be the guy to ask about Randy Fichtner and how ineffective or effective he's been. I've talked to Steelers fans in the past, and most of them have said this guy's ineffective. So, for whatever it's worth, he and the offensive line coach were both moved on from because their contracts had expired. It's not like they fired him. They just didn't renew their contract. So we'll see what the Steelers decide to do. I think part of the problem is Big Ben. Let's just call a spade a spade. Big Ben is a part of Randy Fichtner didn't throw 4 interceptions. Ben did that. Okay, Randy Fichtner didn't throw a ball short and throw it right to Sione Takitaki with the receiver wide open behind him. Ben did that. Okay, so again, somebody's got to fall on the sword. Obviously, it's not going to be Ben. So Randy Fichtner is the guy that has to take the blame here. In case you missed it, Broncos hired George Patton as their new general manager, formerly Vikings assistant GM. And another team that has done a ton of work in the draft is the Minnesota Vikings. Remember, they had 15 draft picks last year. The Vikings have always been a team with Rick Spielman as their GM, has always been a team not really big on free agency, but really big on drafting guys, developing them, and then re-signing them and keeping them in Minnesota. They've always been of that mindset. They don't spend a lot of money on guys outside of their building. And so the draft is very important in Minnesota. And I would assume that the Broncos are now going to put huge emphasis on draft picks and retaining their own with the hire of George Patton in Denver as John Elway takes a step back. And to me, this is Elway's way of saying, you won't be able to abuse me and blame me for the success or failures of this team because of the lack of quarterbacks and this and that. Now I'm going to allow that blame to fall on somebody else so that when this doesn't work, you can't blame me. So essentially he's passing the buck here, but George Patton going to get an opportunity to be the guy. Let's see what he does with that opportunity in Denver. This is really interesting, this next one. In case you missed it, Dolphins players, quote unquote, not convinced Tua will be great in the future and don't think he should be the unquestioned starter heading into the 2021 season. What? What? You don't think he's gonna be great? How do you know that? How can you say that after 7 or 8 starts? Now, granted, guys know. All right. If you've been in the league long enough, you know talent when you see talent. You know elite stuff when you see it. And you can tell right away when a guy has it or doesn't have it. Now, that said, I didn't necessarily love the Dolphins, the way they handled Tua. Now, the playbook and what they allowed Tua to do was trash last year. You know, the play calling dramatically changed, and maybe Tua wasn't seeing the field well. Maybe a lot came at him too fast and he wasn't ready. Bottom line is, how can you make that assertion if you're a Dolphins player? How can you feel that way? And I get it. You know, you've played with Ryan Fitzpatrick and you've seen what this guy's done, and he gave you the best chance to win. Nobody's doubting that. Ryan Fitzpatrick gave them the best chance to win. No one's doubting that, but he's not the future. Tua is. So they wanted to see what they had, and I thought there were times when he played well. You look at that Arizona game. They put up 34 or 37, one of the two, and Tua was outstanding in that game. There were games where Tua didn't have to do much, like the Rams game, where he was just there, and the defense and special teams did all the work, and he just didn't turn it over, and they won. At the end of the day, this is the thing that has really frustrated me over the last, decade, this shift in how quarterbacks are perceived. And really, it's not limited to the quarterback anymore. Because I had a Washington fan yesterday on my live stream ask me, is Antonio Gandy Golden a bust? The man played in all of 4 games in 2020. And somebody asked me, is he a bust? And I'm like, how can he be a bust? He barely played. He essentially redshirted this year. But that's the culture that we've created as fans now, where it's this microwavable, draft prospect development situation where you want guys to come in and right away, they better come in, hit the ground running, and blaze the entire league. If you're not playing like Justin Jefferson right out of the gate, then you're a bust. If you're not playing like Chase Young right out of the gate, if you're not playing like Jeremy Chin right out of the gate, you're a bust. Get him out of here. If you're not playing like, one of the elites that come in immediately and they just get it, then you're a bust. How could that be? How can that be? I don't understand why people feel like you have to come in the league and right away, I need instant results or this guy can't do it. So because Tua didn't look as good as the Chargers rookie quarterback, he can't do it. He's not good. Is that essentially what the line we're drawing in the sand now? If you don't look like Joe Burrow, or you don't look like, why can't I think of the Chargers quarterback name? Justin Herbert. If you don't look like Tua or Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, then you can't do it. That's how we doing it now? After 1 year? It'd be one thing if Tua looked this way after 3 years. Fine, I get it. But after 1 year, you're not convinced? How can you be convinced after 1 year? The guy, everybody doesn't mature at the same rate. That doesn't fly with me. I just can't. But we'll see what happens. That wasn't the Dolphins brass saying that. That was players. We'll see. He's going to have to win them over, apparently. It's okay. I don't mind players being skeptical. I don't. And them wanting competition. I don't mind that at all. I just don't hope they think that this guy's going to be a bust. I hope that's not what they're thinking. Not after 1 year. Okay? That'd be a little absurd to me. Anyway, I want to take a couple more comments before I finish up these in case you missed it. Let's see. Chris Z says, Louie, what do you think is going to happen with Taylor Heineke this offseason? I'm a Dolphins fan, and I'm interested in him, to be honest. He's not going anywhere. They're not going to allow him to walk out of the building. Chris, you're the perfect person to ask. What do you think about Tua? How he was handled in his rookie season and what you saw from him. I have my opinions, but I want to hear from an actual Dolphins fan. Heineke isn't going anywhere. They're going to re-sign him in Washington. He loves Washington because he knows the system. That's why he looked as good as he looked, because he was familiar with the system going all the way back to Minnesota when he was with Scott Turner. Then he was with Scott Turner again in Carolina, and now he's with Scott Turner again in Washington. So very well versed in the language of Scott Turner and that offense. You put him in a different offense, you may not get the same quarterback right away. But there's a lot there to like. But he's a smaller guy, injury concerns. He got hurt in the game. So that's something else to consider. But Washington's going to keep him in Washington. I can assure you of that. Captain Spartan 04 says, overall, none of the coaching hires this year make me think the franchise is completely changing. Jags maybe, but that's because of T-Law. Also, Chargers linked to Bills OC according to Dan Orlowski. Well, that was always the thought, was that the Chargers were going to hire, and we talked about this, Brian Daboll, Bills offensive coordinator. Obviously, the Bills are in the playoffs, so they can't interview him. So that's probably why we haven't heard a lot about the Chargers head coaching search in all the interviews. They were reportedly in the Urban Meyer sweepstakes. They threw their name in the hat, but he ultimately chose Jacksonville. At the end of the day, we talked about the similarities between Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. And then we also talked about the connection to the GM, Tom Telesco, and Brian Daboll reportedly went to the same high school up in New York. And I said, I don't know if that means they're buddies. That just means they were in the same area at the same time. They probably are buddies, though. That's why everybody's drawing that line and making those connections. And that's what we've talked about. We'll see if that actually happens or not. The Soundwave 92 says, seeing Deshaun Watson's latest tweet today is telling me he wants out of Houston. But what do you think, Lou? I'm telling you that he's getting close to the point. He hasn't asked for a trade formally yet. He hasn't requested one. He hasn't gotten to the point where he's dug in his heels and says, I want out. I'm not showing up to training camp. But the prevailing thought right now is that he's heading towards that direction. And his tweets and him posting a picture on IG of him in a Joe Montana jersey, all of these signs point to him getting to the point where he wants out. And he's dropping these subtle hints and clues right now. Like I said, Cal McNear needs to be doing his best version of moonwalking right now. I'm talking 1983 Motown, Mike Jack moonwalking right now. If he can't find a way to clean up this mess that he's created, he's going to lose the best player that this franchise has ever seen in Deshaun Watson, and that includes J.J. Watt. So it's not looking good for the Texans, but I'm not giving up on the situation because they still hold all the cards. Even if Deshaun says, well, I'm not going to play, I'm going to sit out. And the new CBA pretty much states that you can't sit out. You can sit out if you want to, but it's going to be pretty damn pricey. So you're really not in a position now with this new CBA to sit out when you're under contract. You could do that when you are on a franchise tag that you didn't sign yet. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. And we saw Le'Veon Bell do that. You know, when you're not under contract, you can do whatever you like. But this man just signed a contract. So he's not really at liberty to say, I'm not showing up. I mean, if he wants to pay the Texans, this isn't like the old CBA where a guy can sit out for 2 weeks and then he comes back and the team decides to waive all of the fines. The CBA clearly states that you can no longer do that. If you amass $250,000 in fines, you got to pay the $250,000. If you amass $1.5 million in fines, you can't say, all right, I'm back now. Can you waive those fines? You got to pay that. So he's in no position to say what he is or isn't going to do. And the Texans have all the power, but you don't want a guy that doesn't want you. So, so it's one thing to say, hey, you either playing for us or you're not playing at all, like the Bengals did once upon a time with Carson Palmer, where they say, hey, either you playing for us, bruh, or you're not playing at all. And Carson said, fine, I won't play at all. Don't worry about it. And he didn't. But, again, Deshaun Watson wants to play football. You know, and he doesn't want this thing to get ugly. I don't think he wants this thing to get ugly. He just wants change. But Kyle McNair doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to change very much. So I think that's where you run into the problem. Anyway, in case you missed it, Chuck Pagano retires after 19 years of service coaching in the National Football League. Big ups to Chuck Pagano and him deciding to hang it up, man. Was the defensive coordinator for the last 2 years in Chicago. We all know about the Chuck Strong campaign when he had cancer as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And really likable guy, man. And so Chuck P hanging it up after 19 years of coaching in the league. Hope he finds peace, happiness, and joy in retirement. We see a lot of these coaches retire and then realize this retirement shit isn't what it's all cracked up to be. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. And Wade Phillips, in case you missed it, Wade Phillips is like, hey, I'm ready to retire retirement. Hey, somebody come get me, man. I don't want to do this shit anymore. This is not what I thought it was going to be. I'd rather be coaching on Sundays than watching football. So hopefully Chuck P finds it a lot more relaxing than Wade Phillips did. Anyway, in case you missed it, Seahawks and former offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer part ways due to quote-unquote philosophical differences. Translation, the Seahawks offense went to shit at the end of the season, and I talked about this after the loss against the Rams. I said, really, there needs to be a probe into their offense and what the hell happened to it, because you went from Russell Wilson at the forefront of the MVP discussion the first, 8 weeks of the season, and this offense having it on tilt. I mean, whatever Russell did and whatever he touched turned to gold. And it went from that to this offense being incapable of scoring 30 points at season's end and struggling mightily against Washington and the 49ers and the Rams twice. And they failed to be able to generate with 2,000-yard receivers and a running back in Chris Carson that everybody respects around the league, and a quality backup in Carlos Hyde. I thought the injury to Greg Olsen hurt, but it wasn't supposed to hurt that much, right? Like, there was enough weaponry out there. They didn't have any major injuries at the skill positions like DK or Lockett went down or anything like that. They just, for whatever reason, it got stale. There wasn't enough adjustments. Teams made adjustments to what they were doing, and they never made the counter for whatever reason. And so philosophical differences, my ass, he wasn't getting the job done, and they decided to go in a different direction. Now, Russ put out a tweet pretty much saying, hey, that was my guy. I'm going to miss our meetings. I'm going to miss our Bible study. You know, Shotty, you were my dude. You always going to be one of my guys. So, you know, that was Russell Wilson's guy. He's no longer there. We'll see where he's going to land on his feet. You know, Brian Schottenheimer's been in the league for a long time, and we know in this league, offensive and defensive coordinators get recycled. You know, like that 12-pack you got in the fridge, or you know that 6-pack you got down at the bottom of the fridge. Those cans, they get recycled. So do these offensive and defensive coordinators around the league. So I assume Brian Schottenheimer will show up across your timeline or across your crawl watching SportsCenter or ESPN, and he'll be on somebody's staff, even if they got to create a position for him. May not be offensive coordinator. It may be assistant quarterbacks coach and assistant head coach. They just be creating titles for dudes. He'll end up on somebody's staff. And finally, I saved this one for last because it's a perfect segue into our final segment of the night. Patrick Mahomes likes Odell Beckham Jr.'s tweet. Shame on you if you step toot the old dirty back up. He couldn't help himself. You're already injured. You haven't contributed to this run since like week 10. And he couldn't help himself. He couldn't sit on the sidelines and just shut the hell up and just let whatever happens. He had to go and tweet something. Now, it wasn't really all that, you know, like flagrant, you know? But again, what did I tell you guys about when we brought up Juju Smith-Schuster last week? These players, and it doesn't matter what sport it is, these guys are hyper sensitive. And they're very competitive. And they look for any and every edge. Anything that gives them extra motivation. I told you I'm a very, very hyper competitive person. Almost to a fault. Almost to the point where you probably don't want to be on my team. Because I'm not always the best teammate. Because I get pissed off. Because I want to win. And I'm not a cheater. So it's not win at all costs, but it's damn close. All right, anything below cheating, I'm not a cheater. But anything else, I'm looking to do it. I'm trying to win. And if you give me any motivation, I'm using it. This is the tweet from Odell Beckham. Don't be surprised this weekend when they win. Just throwing it out there now. Close quote. Really, dude? You could tell everybody in your circle, hey, the Browns going to win this week. You could tell everybody in your phone, hey, the Browns going to win this week. Don't be surprised when it happens. The minute you decide to take that to socials, what in the hell did you think was going to happen? And didn't you think for 1 second, man, Patrick and company might get a wind of this? You really think he needs any extra added motivation? Seriously, you really think Patrick Mahomes needs you to tell him that they're not going to win this week? Okay, cool. Good job, OBJ. Good job. Not even in the lineup and still finding ways to F stuff up. Good job. Found that interesting, to say the least. Anyway, I want to take a couple more comments before we finish up this show with my money picks of the week. Let's see. Jordan Jones says, could you give me your best guess to why you think college punt protection is so different than the pros? Um, honestly, you don't have to be, a genius in college to get your shit off. You see them doing all kinds of, you know, 8 guys back here and, 3 extra guys in front of the punter. And, they got these rugby style kickers where they catch it and they run 5 yards and then kick it. It's just a different game because you're not really scheming up ways to get to the punter. It's like, it's just different, and it's not as much attention to detail. So you can do some of the stuff they do in the NFL. It's so precise, and it's really, really detail intensive. And if one guy doesn't do his job, you can end up with a block kick. I mean, how often is it you get block kicks in college? Not very often. It's weird. It's just weird. College football at times feels like a different sport from the NFL sometimes, with the way they run it, the clock and all that. After first downs, the clock stops and all that stuff. But, yeah, I mean, my best guess is just I really don't have a guess for you. I'm not going to even try to bullshit you. I don't know. It's weird, period. Captain Spartan 04 says, real quick Steelers therapy. I know we'll still be good, but it feels like we just stuck in a circle and never taking the next step. I know I'm spoiled, but it just seems like we just wasted a decade. I mean, honestly, after Tomlin got there and you went to the Super Bowl twice early on in his regime, you thought, oh, yeah, it's going to be plenty more of these. And you haven't been back. Now, you're not dissimilar from, Patrick Ewing and Karl Malone and all those guys that played in the Jordan era that never won a championship. They didn't win a championship because they played against Jordan. You played against Brady, man. Sorry. I mean, it is what it is. Your defense was never good enough to beat Tom Brady. You needed a Denver Broncos circa 2013 through 15 type of defense in Denver to beat Tom Brady, and you never had that. You just didn't. Your offense, you had some of the best offensive weaponry this league has ever seen when you had the killer bees. Between Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Bryant, and I think I might be, and Ben, of course. Martavis Bryant. I mean, your offense was ridiculous. But it didn't matter how good your offense was. You weren't going to outduel Tom Brady. You needed some defense. Problem is, you never had it. Captain Spartan 04 says, yeah, Randy was a great human. Or how about Randy's not dead, so Randy is a great human. Literally Tomlin's first hire, but reality was he wasn't the right guy. Ben, too, wasn't the best, so it didn't help. It happens. Sucks for Fichtner. Probably didn't deserve his fate, but, it is what it is. Kevin Guvera says, Washington football team is interviewing Eric Stokes for GM. He is currently our director of pro personnel. Interesting. Captain Spartan says, hoping we get Pep Hamilton as OC and Doug Marrone as O-line coach, but we'll probably get Jim Caldwell or promote Matt Canada. Just ready for future hate seeing Ben and Pouncey like this. I heard a rumor that Pouncey is retiring. That's why Ben was crying on the sidelines. Is that true? Anyway. Let's get to the last topic and segment of the day. You know what it is.
Money. Yeah. Money. Yeah. Hey, that's a good pick.
Yeah. Money. Yeah. Money. Yeah. Let's get it. Got these money picks of the week, and that's a good pick. Last week, 4-2 in the wild card weekend, the first ever super wild card weekend. Lost the Seahawks game. Didn't expect the Rams to do what they did, and that was really impressive. And I lost the Browns-Steelers game. So a lot of you may have won that game. I thought the Steelers were going to show up and show out. I was wrong. So here we are, divisional round weekend, 4 games, 8 teams left, and we're going to go in sequential order in which these games will be played. Starting with Saturday's action, Rams at Packers. And someone asked earlier about the matchup between, it was Lil Gilly that asked about the matchup between Ramsey and Adams should be dynamic. So let me just say, Davante Adams is the type of receiver that Jalen Ramsey should be able to handle. Why? Because he's not the fastest guy in the world. Ramsey struggles with pure speed. All right. The big guys, Ramsey's going to check those guys all day long. It's the small, fast guys that really give Ramsey issues because they can run by him. And Ramsey, although he's got speed, you can run by Jalen Ramsey. I saw DK Metcalf smoke him on multiple occasions and the ball either be overthrown or just simply not thrown at all. So you can get by Jalen Ramsey, but you got to have elite speed, and that's not what Davante Adams has. But I'll say this as well. Ramsey at times can be aggressive at the line of scrimmage. Adams is not the guy you want to do that with because he'll beat you off the line of scrimmage badly, and he's so good at the stem of his route that once you get in a trail technique, he can lose you big time. So it'd be in Jalen Ramsey's best interest to play off and not go for any of the and again, it's not a lot of wasted movement with Davante Adams. He's so smooth, man. To me, he's the best route runner in the league right now, and he's my favorite guy because he doesn't waste a lot of movement. Him and Stephon Diggs, they don't waste shit. They get in and they get out, and that's why they always open. And so it's going to be a fun one. I really think the Rams have a legitimate shot in this game because they're going to apply pressure to Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Donald, a.k.a. the Terminator, never, ever trust a man with 2 first names is healthy, and it sounds like he's going to be able to give it a go this weekend. If he's right, they're going to be able to do what Tampa Bay did to Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers doesn't like to be hit. 49ers did it to him last year, and the Buccaneers did it to him this year, and we saw the way those 2 games unfolded. Anytime this Packers offense sees a legitimate defense, they usually cower and run in the opposite direction. They did it against Tampa. They were up big against Indy, blew that lead, ended up losing that game against another really good defense in this league. I think that they're going to be in this game. And, you know, what I've always said is if you could take away Davante Adams, and I'm not saying Ramsey's going to be able to do that, but it's going to be a hell of a matchup. You can take away Davante Adams and force the rest of that group to beat you, that ragtag bunch to beat you. You got a hell of a shot. It's going to be interesting to see if they just say, all right, Ramsey, this is why we paid you all that money. Go do your job. Take Davante Adams out of the game. Adams is still going to get some, but it shouldn't be 11 for 137 and, a touch or 2. It should be more like 6 for 62. You can live with that. What you can't live with is 10 for 115 or 11 for 137 or 12 for 152 and 2 touches. That's going to get you beat. So that's going to be one of the key matchups. That and, of course, the Rams defensive front versus this Packers offensive line. Remember, David Bakhtiari injured, out for the season with that injury that he sustained in practice heading into week 17. So this is not the Packers offensive line at full strength against one of the best defensive fronts in all of football. So that to me is where the matchup is. That's where this game is going to be won. Can the Packers execute offensively against the best defense in football? It is what it is. It's the best defense left in this playoffs. It's the best defense in football. Can they execute against them? If the answer is yes, they're going to win the game. If the answer is no, that opens the door for this Rams football team to escape Lambeau with a victory. I don't see it happening. I have my concerns about this Packers defense, but this Rams offense doesn't scare me. And I was so proud of Jared Goff last week for the gutsy effort he turned in, but they're not really capable of scoring, 31 offensively, not without the defense's help. And so if this thing were to turn into a pseudo shootout and the Packers somehow manage to get to 30 in this game, just like the Rams got to 30 last week. If they were able to but the Rams got to 30 with the help of the defense, as I just mentioned, had a pick 6 last week. If the Packers are able to get to 30, can this Rams offense, without the aid of the defense, get to 30? I think the answer is no. And I don't know if the Packers themselves are going to make it to 30, but I think they're going to ultimately win this game. They're the better team, and they better find a way to scheme up stopping Aaron Donald. I know that. I've seen teams fail in that department and him wreck entire game plans. If they don't block Aaron Donald, the Rams are probably going to win this game. But I'm going with the Packers at the crib. To me, the big matchup is that Packers offense against the Rams defense, and specifically Ramsey versus Adams, and the Packers offensive line against Michael Brockers, Aaron Donald, Gumby, and all of those guys that they rotate in and out of that lineup. That's going to be a fascinating game to watch. Ravens Bills, the nightcap on Saturday night, 8:15. I've already told you guys that this is not a good matchup for Buffalo. And it's amazing. The Ravens, 7 weeks ago, outside the playoffs looking in and really were in serious danger. They were in peril. Serious danger of not making the postseason. But I had confidence that they'd get on their horse, and I looked at their final, 5 games of the season or so, and I said, they're going to run the table. And that they did. And it really gave them a boost of confidence. It really did. And I see this Ravens team just like I saw the Titans last year. They got in late at the end of the season, riding a hot Ryan Tannehill or Derrick Henry. And they got in and they ran the hell out of the football. And Tannehill was just a passenger. And they played outstanding defense. And it got them all the way to the AFC Championship game. I see the same thing with this Ravens team. They're hot. They're confident. They're playing exceptional defense. They're going to get after Josh Allen. I could see Allen making a mistake or two in this game. He hasn't made, it feels like in forever, made a mistake in like forever. He seems to always be making the right decision. But, that carelessness we saw at the end of the game when he fumbled, I could see 1 or 2 fumbles in this game. I could see him not seeing a defender, a backside corner that he doesn't see, and he's throwing back across his body, and Marlon Humphrey or Marcus Peters jumps in front of a pass, and he just never saw that guy. And I can see, and I have zero confidence in the Bills' defense. And the game last week against Indy reassured that for me. It confirmed what I feared, that this Bills' defense isn't up for the challenge. Indianapolis went up and down the field, especially in the second half of that game. And if not for time, they simply just ran out of time. If they would have had 1 timeout left, they would have at least gotten into field goal range. I thought that the Colts had success running it. They were able to throw it anywhere they wanted to on the field. They had no answers for the tight ends. Well, what do you think the Ravens are going to do? They're going to throw the football to the goddamn on tight ends. So I don't have any confidence in the Bills' ability to stop this Ravens offense. And I think the Ravens are going to do the one thing that the Bills don't want to do, and that's play a knockdown, drag-out slobber knocker. They don't want to play in a 20. They don't want to come into the Ravens world 23-20. They want to play up around the 30s, 27, 30, 33. They want to get up there. And the Ravens want no parts of that. They're going to bleed the clock. They're going to shorten the game just like they did against Tennessee. And I think they're going to beat this Buffalo Bills team. Give me the Baltimore Ravens on the road to go to Buffalo and beat the Buffalo Bills. Now, I will say Lamar Jackson's comments about not wanting to play in the snow and really being cold adverse, not really what you want to hear, knowing that you have to go to Buffalo. He's going to have to get over that. But if you can play in Cleveland in December and get it done, I surmise he can play in Buffalo in January. Give me the Baltimore Ravens. in this football game. Sunday. Browns, Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs. 3:05 kickoff on Sunday. They switched up the game on me. I thought this was going to be a 1 and a 4:30 or 4:40. They went with the old, championship weekend times on Sunday. 3:05 and 6:40. What in the hell prompted them to do that? I had plans for my Sunday night. Never mind. Anyway, Browns are hot, right now. They're the hot topic. Can they go into Arrowhead and dethrone the Super Bowl defending Kansas City Chiefs? And I'm not going to keep you in suspense. The answer is no. They cannot. But they have the same formula that the Titans had last year and a similar formula to the Ravens, which is they're going to run the hell out of the football, and I'm not sure the Chiefs are going to do a great job of stopping it. They're going to go play action fake off of the run, and they're going to try to get chunk plays that way. Here's the thing. The Chiefs have already shown us that they are, clock draining proof. You can do all of that shit. You can win time of possession. They don't need the football for 35 minutes to put up 30 points. Okay, they've already proved to us. They've proven time and time again. You can have your little time of possession, man. Dominate it. Do all you can do. The Titans dominated time of possession in the first half of the game last year. They were up 17-7. They did everything right and still got their asses beat badly. And so you can run your little, Kareem Hunt and you can run it with Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield can do a great job of managing the game and finding the tight ends and getting those chunk plays when they're available. You can do all the right. You can even finish off your touchdowns, which the Browns did beautifully against the Steelers. Finish those drives off with touchdowns, which is what you got to do if you want to beat the Chiefs. You can do everything right. But if you make that one mistake, that one fumble, that one turnover, one mistake. Didn't see Tyrann Mathieu there. Baker didn't. And he picked him off. He baited him. That's all they need if you get into a shootout situation. The Chiefs are Teflon. None of this shit sticks. None of this stuff applies to them. So all of these theories, hey, take the air out of the football. The best offense against the Chiefs or the best defense is your offense. Keep Mahomes and company on the sidelines. Cool. Go ahead and try it. Go ahead. Because you can spend 9 minutes on a drive, cap it off with a touchdown, and they can get back in the end zone in 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Okay, it's your ball again. Do it again. Go on your little 13-play, 9-minute drive again. Go ahead. I dare you. Go on your little 18-play, 9-minute drive. You're going to need about 18 plays to put up a 9-minute drive. Go on your little 16-play voyage. Do it again. You ain't going to be able to keep doing that over and over again. And they don't need a whole bunch of time to strike. And this Browns defense, not great. It's good. It ain't great. It's good enough. But, if you block Myles Garrett, you can do some things against this Browns defense. So I'm not impressed with their defense. I think they have some stuff on offense. I still don't think they scare anybody deep. Doesn't matter. That's not who they are anymore. And they don't need to be that team, honestly. They're going to have a chance early in this game. Early. I think this is going to be close early. Chiefs may come out, maybe a little rusty from the time off. Somebody showed me a stat of the last 6 times the Chiefs have come off a bye, including the playoffs and during the regular season. And I think in every single one of those games, it's like 35, 42, 38, 47, 39, and 43. Like, they always tear it up. And this has been a Andy Reid thing going all the way back to Philadelphia. You give Andy an extra week, and Andy comes out guns a-blazing. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do this week, but I'm saying that's what they're going to do this week. Give me the Chiefs at the crib to advance to Championship Sunday in the AFC. And finally, Bucks and Saints, 6:40 Sunday evening to cap off divisional round weekend. All right. you're not getting the same ass whooping we got the last time these two teams met. So you can go ahead and cancel that. This Buccaneers team, they're different. They're more confident. They got Antonio Brown. They had him the last time they played when the ass whooping took place, but he had just gotten there. He's got his feet soaked, now they're wet. They're not just, he didn't dip his toe. His feet are soaked now. All right, he's in the offense. They got a little Antonio Brown package now where they get frisky with him. They're a lot more confident. Brady knows what Bruce Arians expects from him and vice versa now. So they're a lot further along. I can tell you this Buccaneers, and I know they did not have Devin White, and that's a big problem last week against Washington. Their defense stinks. It really does. Their secondary is just abysmal. I went back and watched the film, and my goodness, Washington should have scored 40 in that game. It's really frustrating that how many self-inflicted wounds they had in that game. Drops, and the officials had a couple of egregious calls and missed calls, and it just bad mistakes by a team that was not used to being in that spot. But the Saints are used to being in this spot. Doesn't mean that they're not opposed to losing. We've seen this Saints team at home lose in the postseason. They did it last year to Minnesota. Did it 2 years ago to the Rams. So they're not opposed to dropping one at the crib when you expect them to win. That being said, the buck stops here. The Buccaneers, this is a nice little run with Brady in year one. I told you they weren't winning a Super Bowl in year one, and I meant that. And they might win it next year. Brady comes back. He is 1 year more comfortable in the scheme under Bruce Arians, and there's a better feel for what everyone's role is in the offense. And, they've got a really good team. They're full of talent on the offensive side. If they don't get after Drew Brees, and there's a question as to whether Latavius Murray is going to be able to play in this game, and that's huge because he's a big part of their run game. But if they don't get to Drew Brees and he's able to, sit back there and kind of figure out where he wants to go with the football, he's going to find holes in what is a sloppy Buccaneers secondary. He is. But if Devin White is blitzing and Shaq Barrett is winning off the edge, and JPP's getting home, and Ndamukong Suh is collapsing the pocket, and William Golston is doing the same, then they can win that game in New Orleans. Because I watched this Bears defense last week reduce the Saints to 21 points. Now, maybe if the Bears were more of an offensive threat, maybe they would have scored more than 21 last week. But I was like, that's all you can muster is 21? Seriously? That's the best you can do? Look, they're going to have to score more than 21 this week. That's for damn sure. And I think they will. I'll take the Saints at the crib because I think their defense is going to get after Tom Brady. I think they're going to, unlike Washington's defense, they're going to make him uncomfortable. And I think they are going to force a turnover of Brady. His worst games of the season came against this Saints group. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. But if anybody can do it, it's this New Orleans Saints football team. And so I've got the Saints winning. And, let me throw out some scores. I thought I did pretty good with the scores last week. I'm going to write these down this week because I want to come back to these scores next week. So I'm going to go Rams 16, Packers 27. I'm going to go Ravens 22, Bills 17. Nah, that's too low. 20. Walk-off, just incredible field goal from 47 yards to give them the 22-20 win over the Bills. Stun them at Orchard Park. Chiefs 34, Browns 23. And Saints 27, Bucks 23. Those are my scores. Those are my picks. I feel damn good about those picks. What says you? Leave your picks in the comment section of this video. Really appreciate you guys for chopping it up with me here on the Louie T Network podcast as we wrap up this beautiful week that was. I want to read this comment, these couple of comments, and then get out of here. Just Jordan Jones says, felt that Asked my special teams coach in college the same question about punt pro, and he couldn't explain the difference either. He said, in college, we just do extra shit. Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to have some kind of philosophical, real technical reason for you, but I'm like, nah, I just think they just doing some extra stuff. You know, like, honestly, you don't see the same caliber of athletes in college either. So you can try different stuff. But I mean, to me, honestly, just snap the damn ball, 15 yards back, and have your punter kick it. Why do we need a guy running 5 yards and then kicking it? Shit is dumb. But like you said, I think your college coach summed it up really well. College, they just do extra shit. Because I can't really explain to you why they do all the stuff that they do. I mean, you get teams with the swinging gate, for extra points. They'll start all their people out at the far hash, and then all of them will run over. Like, why? Why the theatrics just to kick an extra point from 2 yards away? I'm like, really? But, that's the pageantry that comes with college football. Sometimes it's a show. Kyle Little says, I believe in Goff. He's got another chance like he did 2 years ago at the Saints to show people that he is a winner. Won't look sexy like the elite quarterbacks, but he will get it done. That's a great point. And this is a really big spot for him. I think they can go in there and win. The key will be the defense. Because I think Goff isn't going to vomit all over himself. This Packers defense isn't great. That's why I got you at 16. I don't think it's a problem of, Jared Goff and his offense not being able to produce as much as it is. I think the Packers are going to dominate time of possession and keep the offense off the field. I could see this being a game where the Rams get 3 first half possessions and another 3 or 4 in the second half. Normally in a game you're getting 10, 11 possessions. I could see you going and getting 6 or 7 in this game. Because that Packers offense, when it's running the way that they want to run it, yeah, they're going to take some shots, but, Matt LaFleur is trying to run the football. He's going to establish the run. So you could get into a situation where they want to get it out of Aaron's hands quickly, and you can get some little check downs to Aaron Jones or Robert Tonyan underneath. And if they're taking away, Devontae Adams, you might have to reduce yourself to finding, Marquez Valdez Scantling underneath on a shallow cross or something, So we'll see. If the defense plays, the offense will have a shot. Ali Side says, how a good weekend, Lou, or have a good weekend, I think is what you're trying to say. This is going to be a crazy weekend indeed. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on the 130th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. If you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Go ahead, hit that like button, and you know what time it is. Hit that notification bell, just like today. You didn't know when the hell this podcast was going to start, but if you got that notification bell, and I'm pretty sure most of you do, that's how you knew to come and check me out, you'll be able to see what time and when I'm going live, and you don't miss a thing. So if you're out there and you're still watching, there's 80 of you out there, only 38 likes. Help a brother out, man. Let's get those likes up to at least 50 if we can. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead, glide to the side, allow you to enjoy your weekend. We'll be back tomorrow. Tons of action to break down. We'll be back first after Rams and Packers, and then the nightcap of Ravens and Bills. If I get a game wrong this week, it'll be that one. But I went out on a limb, and I'm not afraid to do that because I feel confident about the Ravens. They're the team that nobody except Kansas City wants to face. So we'll see what happens. Should be a ton of fun. Bart Scott can't wait. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, and this has been the Louie T Network podcast. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
LouieTeeNetwork.